The investment part of it is a small part of what we do. So we dig deep in the psychological side of it because there's a lot more than having enough money to retire. You're going to get bored real fast. And the worst thing you do in retirement is being bored. You have enough money to do what you want in most cases. So let's figure out what that looks like. A client that we started working with about 12 years ago, and y'all recently, kind of sold that business. I think he did it really right. He's pretty damn happy. I mean, he's the happiest I've seen him. Every business that I've seen get acquired either through you or through another seller or whatever, there's always opened opportunities for the employees. Even the banks I've worked with, and I think everyone I've worked with has gotten acquired at some point. But I can tell you where I am today and being able to start my own business was because some banks got acquired. I probably wouldn't have made that leap, honestly, because I had a goal. I was retiring at a certain age, and hey, my plan was working, stuff like that. I would have probably never started. And it's been one of the biggest wealth builders for me. And it's also allowed me to take my clients to the next level.
Welcome everyone to episode 2 of Next Life. The episode today I think is going to be front and center with a lot of business owners. It's about money and wealth, which we all like and is a big part of our life. Specifically in the context, we're going to try to answer the questions of how do you handle the wealth in your business today, and more importantly, how do you figure out how much to sell your business for the exit that you ultimately will definitely do one day. The guest today I have is Rodney Hiroka. He's CEO and owner of 4Life Wealth Advisors. It's a leading wealth management firm based out of New Braunfels. Rodney brings a wealth of experience to the table. He's carved out a long, successful career in wealth management field. The journey took him from building a wealth management firm for a large regional bank to ultimately establishing his own firm. I've had the privilege of working with Rodney on several occasions with his clients to help them create a plan in context of what I'm doing with Next Life to help owners figure out their next life and their exit. And then Rodney does a good job of helping them with the financial side of that. I also believe he does a real good job of simplifying the complex thing of financial planning, because that can be very complex. But it doesn't have to be. So welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. I thought maybe we get a little bit of background for the listeners about you and where you came from.
Okay.
Not the formal, just read every line of a bio, just sort of how you got to the wealth management world.
Okay. So I started in wealth management in 1992, kind of stumbled in my way into it. Was working for a regional bank at that point. They had a brokerage opening. I kind of stumbled my way in there looking for a job, and they hired me. And it was kind of like drinking from a fire hose, because the manager that hired me went on maternity leave and never came back. Mm-hmm. So I had to learn very quickly right, wrong, and, different concepts of investing and how that worked and what the equity market was, what the bond market was. From there, went on to work for another regional bank that we basically built out the program. Started there in 99, built it to basically $1 billion in assets before I left, and went out on my own and with a couple other partners, and eventually landed up at 4Life, which I own 100% myself. And our concept is, how do we simplify it for the client? How do we make it so when the business owner comes and talks to us, either pre-sale or after sale or in that transition, what does that look like? Because the client, that person has grown their money, grown their assets, and now they need to figure out, okay, what do we do now? And how do we set it up for the sale? So we're real good about taking that. They've made the widget, and now we can figure out how do we take the funds that they have, grow them for us, either, pre-sale where they're setting up a 401k plan because they're at that transition, or they're at the point where, hey, how do we set it up for the sale? And what does it look like when we exit? What do we do with our money? Because it's a big question, because while the business owner does well what they do, and like I tell them, I couldn't do your job if it's oil field, trucking, if it's whatever they do well, we can't do that, but I can tell you how we position your money.
Well, let's talk about that from a standpoint of just broadly about wealth and money. I mean, I know you and I share a lot of those views, and I know your firm does. I mean, I always thought of it as money as comfort and security, first and foremost. But then sort of how do you want to live your life with whom and where sort of immediately comes front and center. Now, sometimes that's in the context of the business that you now own, or sometimes but I think generally that's certainly the way I think about it. How do you think about it? How do you think your clients think about it?
Well, as far as a firm, we're looking at it as, the investment part of it is a small part of what we do, because that's pretty much a commoditized asset out there where you can find managers that manage money well, place it with them. You have index funds now, the ETF world has changed the investment side of it. It's what is the risk factors of the client and what do they value? What are they looking for in life, and from the standpoint of what does retirement look like for them? If they do decide to retire. So we dig deep in the psychological side of it because there's a lot more than having enough money to retire. It's more about, hey, what am I going to do on day one to retire? What am I going to do on day 365? What am I doing in 10 years? Because retirement can get very monotonous and boring.
Well, and scary for them. I mean, that's a lot of what
scary.
I find when I talk to them about finding a next life, and the fact that it's scary to them to think that something's over. That's what I try to convey to them is nothing's over. It just transfers to something else. But that's a hard concept.
It really is, because if you have a business owner that's been in the business, owned the business, built it up for 40 years, and now all of a sudden, hey, they know they have 365 days that they're still going to be employed by them, but they're really not in control. And they realize that about day 2 of exiting their business. But then day 365 comes up and they look at, what am I going to do now? Mm-hmm. And that's what we try to coach them to is, okay, this is what retirement looks like, And it isn't necessarily sitting around on your sofa watching TV all day. We got to get you in activities. We got to get you involved. And the business owner is scared to death of that.
Well, that was one of my next questions too. Why do you think it is that entrepreneurs, I know I did, they think of financial planning and money from a wealth management in such a different way than normal people that have a 9-to-5 job. It's something that I find when I go through them on the next life and talking about an exit. It's foreign to them, and it's almost scary to them. And then simple things like you and I've talked about and witnessed, because they don't understand the concept that the money that they transfer from their business, their money can make money enough for them to. I mean, and they're not dumb people at all. But it's just a different mindset.
It's really different mindset where a 9-to-5 person knows they have a check coming in every week. They plan for retirement. They're doing the calculation. A business owner, because usually 90% of their wealth is tied up in the business. So they haven't had to worry about, hey, how much money do I need? They know if they work hard, they get the right employees, they build the business up, they're going to make a living. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, okay, now we got to exit. What do we do and how do we make money? So they really don't understand the whole concept of, hey, we're going to earn interest, we're going to earn dividends, we're going to get capital appreciation on other people's equity in businesses and our equity in business. And explain that concept is very, eye-opening for them, I would say,
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah, and it's just a new world for them.
I try to tell them sometimes it's like, you have employees and your employee goes out and make money. Your money can make money, but I think a lot of them don't have other money anywhere else to have ever witnessed that. Yeah. I mean, maybe they have I know we've seen that in few clients you and I've worked together. It's like they have some money set aside, but in context to the big picture, not at all.
No, most of their wealth, they may have a nice home, they may have some other properties, but having the wealth to really invest like they need income for, it's not there. The biggest, flow of money they ever have is when they sell that business. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they have this influx of money, they have it sitting there and they're like, oh, they just wired that money into my checking account. What does tomorrow look like? Because I may have a little paycheck coming from, but it's nothing like I was expecting. And what do I do now with that money? How do I live my life so that I don't run out of money? And that's a scary thought.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's scary. Entrepreneurs by nature are control freaks. and we all are. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but that control factor does go away a bit when you give up this widget and you go hire a firm such as yourself there's some trust involved. There's a whole bunch of things because you're giving up that one widget. And I think that's a big part of it. Plus just not of experiencing something,
Yeah. I mean, we always use that concept of nobody cares what you know till they can trust you. And once they can trust you, that's the biggest thing because, they're turning their money over to us. And, the media has scared the heck out of everybody. And they're like, oh God, what's he going to do with my money? And it's not the investments themselves. It's the concept of, where does their money go? Is the money going to be there so that they can live the rest of their lives and their wives live the rest of their lives and they don't ever have to worry for money. So we have to really invest time and our time into making sure they feel comfortable with what we're doing and make sure they trust us and make sure that, hey, we don't ghost them. We're there. We're calling them every month and making sure that they understand what exactly is going on and that they're going to be okay.
Well, I also think sometimes too, they think of it as more cumbersome, more complex. It's certainly something they don't understand a lot of times just because they've not been exposed to it. Just like the sale process. I mean, they don't know what they don't know. Same with the money management. So I think that's certainly a factor as well. Well, I know we walked them through and we've done this together of what is enough, so maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about how we get that to that number. I try to get from my side of it before we sort of transfer it to you to say, is that really enough? Is, to get them to give me 3 numbers seems to work fairly well, although it becomes chicken and egg.
Yeah.
It becomes, there's a low number that you wouldn't never take any less than that. There's a medium number that's probably pretty good. And then there's a hell yeah number that I'll take tomorrow. And I find when I can get those 3 numbers, now the challenge I always have is, well, I guess I get comments like, I guess that depends on what it'll sell for. And then I have to come back. But in their defense, I think they need to really analyze that. And so I know your firm does a good job of doing that. And so, I kind of like what is the needs and wants bucket. You sort of take them through. Why don't you talk about that?
So let's talk about that. Everybody has needs. It's your basic needs. It's your housing, your food, things that you actually have to cover every month. No matter how much money you have, that's what you have to cover. And we break down that concept to, okay, what does the rest of your life live? Come up with, an average maturity when they're going to pass away, when the wife is going to pass away. How much money do they need to really cover those needs? And, looking at, hey, do you have any medical issues, things like that could come into play at the end. So that's kind of the needs bucket. And I make sure that, we cover that and how much money does it take? So we go through the exercise of, if you have this much money, this will be enough to cover the medical bills, the food bill, the light bill, so you won't ever have to worry about that. Because the thing you want them to really feel comfortable.
That's in the need bucket.
That's in the need bucket. That is there. It has to be there. We have to put enough money in that bucket to cover those needs, okay? So that's the first step in anybody selling the business, okay? And that's still not the low number because they still have wants. And the wants is, I want to travel in Europe for a month or 2 or whatever every year. I want to go hunting on some exotic, trip. I want to take my kids. I want to do whatever. That's the wants bucket. And what I tell everybody is the needs bucket is going to be covered every year. The wants bucket, it can get big or small depending on how much money we get for the business and then how much money I make you our firm makes you over the long term. So, getting that concept down to them on day one really helps them get into that bottom number. Because we want to make sure that we cover the needs and then we cover most of the wants there. The middle number is, hey, we're covering.
Well, and I find, in my own experience, once you leave the world of all intensive business ownership of 60 hours a week or more sometimes, you have time. And time, you're generally, dynamic and usually in decent health, and time equals spend. And that's the whole reason you did it. So, you have to make that bucket realistic, I believe.
I think so because I tell everybody is let's I make them write it down on paper. Wants, needs. Let's write it down. Let's make it simple. Let's talk to your spouse because she may have different wants and needs than you have. We got to figure out what you're going to do. What does your life look like if it's a man or woman or whatever? We got to break that down and make sure that we cover those bases because you are going to have 40 to 70 hours, maybe even 80 hours that you didn't have before. And no waking hours. It's not like you're sleeping during those hours, and we don't want you sleeping. So, and usually it's the A personality. It's the driven person that started that business.
Sure.
They failed a few times. They got up, they brushed it off. And some of the guys would go like, okay, maybe you need to go do consulting work, or maybe you need to do this because you're going to get bored real fast. And the worst thing you do in retirement is being bored. And that's why we work through that concept of needs, wants, how much money do you need, but also get them to understand that, that's just a number. Now we got to figure out what we're going to do with that money. Mm-hmm. And, one of the really cumbersome things is now we have all that money and they look at it in a statement and they're seeing that money. And it's very different because a business goes up or down in value.
That's a good point.
They never really.
Yeah, it's easy to write it. This is what I tell them on the valuation side. I've had since, they don't, a few of them don't really want to seem interested. I'm like, well, why would you not want to know? But the reality of knowing, it's still a range, and knowing is when someone pays you for it.
Correct. Because we anybody can put whatever value they want on that business. And,
right.
Most of the owners, they don't really have a concept. They may have some ballpark figure that they want it to be worth. But is it really worth that? It's only worth what somebody will pay you for it, okay? Mm-hmm. So once we come into what is their number, then we have to look at, is it realistic?
Yes,
and
yeah.
Can Gary get you this
Yeah,
number?
and that's something, that is so critical. But I really like the concept of having them do that independently. Now, you and I have had this. We've worked together on clients, and it does become chicken and egg. And somewhat I do understand their concept of, I guess it'll depend on what it sells. But the thing I try to tell them is, look, you've built this. There is a number that would excite the hell out of you. Now, what that number is doesn't mean it's going to be worth that.
Correct.
But, hey, let's start there, know.
Yeah, because everybody got to start with a number. You know what I mean? Because if you don't know what your number is, then we don't know what you're looking for. And we don't know if it's realistic.
And a lot of those guys, diving into the minutia and the needs bucket, I know a lot of your clients, you'll take their checking account. You tell me to look at their checking account. But I would think with owners, a lot of times they know that. They know what, like me, you could have asked me what my water bill is, and I don't know. But I know what the big number is.
You know what you spend every month. You know how much credit cards are. You know the big number. And most people know that big number. Now, in retirement, the needs change a little bit.
Yeah, why don't you talk about, I think it's interesting, the studies you and your firm and the resources you have about the age brackets. I found that interesting.
Oh, about the spending habits of the age brackets. The younger you are, you're going to spend more money. So when you're talking about, hey, what does it cost to live in retirement? The inflation factor really comes into play for the first, let's say somebody retires at 60 years of age, sells the business, we sell it for X, and they say, hey, we can live on this amount of money. And we have more than we need, so we know we're going to create extra income. Well, what we have to factor in is what is the inflation rate and what does the future look like? So for the first, from age 60 to about 78, that cost is going to go up tremendously. Once you hit about 78 to 80, that cost goes down. And, most projections, they just continue to grow at 3%. And most guys are going like, I'm going to be spending that much. Well, not really, because you're going to slow down lifestyles. The needs
you can't go to Europe and go high diving and all that at 80.
Correct. Very few people can. There are some that can, but most people, when they hit that age, the wants bucket really, really drops off. Okay. So we build that into the concept about what they really need. So let's say from 80, and we do planning out to 102 now.
Okay, well,
because we've raised that. Be honest with you, because people are living longer. We're dealing with professionals that tend to live a little longer, they're healthier, they go to the doctor more. So we plan on that. So from 80 to, let's say, 95, cost goes down. Now, the last 3 years, it spikes up because of healthcare needs, long-term care needs. About 70% of the people need some type of end-of-the-life type of planning, and, cost goes through the roof real fast. You spend more the last 3 years than you probably spent in the last, 30 years of retirement if you're retired for 30 years. So that has to all be built into the plan.
Built into the model.
Yeah, and we use a thing called eMoney and Money Guide Pro to basically build that out. We can project in there. We can have things that, like vacations that they do for 20 years with, projections out there, how they grow. Some years they spend more, some years they spend less. And then, costs going down for 10 years and then costs going up at the end. And that's a really neat concept because that'll help us build how much money they really need. Okay?
Sure. Well, and this is just kind of a philosophical question that I just sort of thought to myself that I've wondered. How much do you think, I think of myself as a good example. You sell and you invest the money and it's getting returns. And then, I'm 58. How much do you think inflation really, because I wrestle with how much I should care about inflation or not. And the reason I wrestle with that is because I'm like, my kids are out of college, some of the normal inflationary items I'm not going to see because I've already got an asset. Do you think, I struggle with what to peg that number in my own projections at, and is it relevant to me, but more relevant, obviously, to someone else?
Yeah. I think it's relevant to everybody, especially, we went through this period of time about 20 years where there really was no inflation. Nobody wanted to talk about. There was inflation, but it was not hitting us as individuals and retirees as individuals. There were some medical costs, but food was staying pretty level. Gasoline, fuel was staying pretty level. What we've had the last 2 years is food was hit, medical stuff that hurts people in retirement. It makes that once bucket get much more costly. Yeah. So if we don't plan on that once bucket going up enough, that's where it can be detrimental. And the business owner is looking at us going like, hey, we didn't plan well. Well, let's talk about this. So we set inflation usually about 3.5% to 4%, depending on the client, depending on.
Yeah, and I think, just an outsider looking in, I always think I don't really understand that, like leaving energy out and food, of the calculation, which is a lot of what you spend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you talk about the way the, government does that, the CPI report, things like that, it really is a little bit of mind boggling about, what are they including, what are they not including? Because most people's major cost is food and fuel.
Yeah.
Bottom line, because they have their house paid for, they're paying their taxes, they're paying their insurance. But even the insurance side of it goes up. Taxes pretty much on the house stays the same after you hit a certain age. But, the insurance costs and things like that and the food cost is real.
Oh, insurance this year alone is crazy.
Yeah.
My homeowner's doubled.
Yeah, no, everybody
doubled.
did. And everybody's sitting there going like, what the heck just happened, And, but when you get disasters and you get things, insurance companies raise costs. And that's something that it's very, very hard to plan for, And hopefully, there's some other things that are going down in cost. But you're right. When you look at an individual that's retired, they're not buying a new home. So they don't care what home cost does.
Right.
If they're buying a home, they're selling their home, they're probably glad it inflated in price so they can sell it. Maybe they downsize. Maybe they move to a retirement community, whatever their goal is there. But the food and energy costs are the major factors that affect them, and the medical one. Those three
medical
factors.
Too, I would
Yeah,
say.
medical.
It's just, it always goes up. It never goes down.
It never goes down.
Same with insurance.
Yeah, and you're looking at it growing at, 6-7% some years. And that's a true cost. And it's like, when you're in retirement, the money you have is what you live on. So you have this basket of money that you have to try to figure out how to stretch out your years.
I know, it's amazing because I sit and do my wife calculation of living to 98. I don't know how long she's going to live, but I'll say, and she's younger than myself, but not that much. And I go, that's a long time. And when you do that properly, it's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is. Somebody that retires, and let's say they need a six-figure, let's say they need $100,000 to retire on day one. They're 60 years old. We know that we have to double that by the time they're 80. Now, then that cost goes
just
down.
From inflation
Just
alone.
from inflation alone.
And people miss that calculation, don't they?
They miss that
Every
calculation.
time.
They don't get that. When they look at me, they kind of glaze over. So this is what I do. I back them up 20 years. And I said, okay, today is 2024. Let's look at 2000 and see what you're living at. What was your house worth? What were you paying for food? And kind of just do
sort of gets in their head then. Huh?
It does. You do a reverse budget and ask them how much they were making back in 2000 and what they made on the last 3 years of the business running or whatever they had out there. And that really is mind boggling for them because they go like, wow, inflation is true. So that's what really opens your eyes. So I say, okay, what do you think is going to happen the next 20 years? And they're like, oh, it's going to continue to go up in cost.
Yeah. Has it ever went down?
No, it hasn't. I mean, we better hope it doesn't because that's called a deflationary environment. And then we have all kind of problems on top of, hey, you're not. Yeah, exactly. So everybody has to be aware of, what they really need. And, working with somebody like our firm, our team, we build those concepts out so that a business owner, how deep do you want to dig in that? And some clients are like, no, I just want to know the basics. How much do I need? And I said, okay, that's fine. We'll do everything in the back room. We'll work that out. We'll make sure. And then they're like, I don't even really care where it's invested. You take care of that. I said, okay. Yeah. So my goal here is like, I always live by the concept. I don't want my clients to ever run out of money. And I live by that concept. We work by that concept. If they will follow our trend line and what we ask them to do. And, some years it's like, hey, you can fill all the wants bucket. You can do everything you want. But it's performance.
And I think that's such a key that I know you believe in. I've practiced, and we've had a lot of deep conversation, you and I, just about investments in general, is they don't really understand that that's a moving target. I mean, it is a moving target, no matter because I see these planners, some of them will just say it's this percentage and this, and then forget about it. Well, that's not really true because every year, it changes. Yeah. And the way I view it, and I know you do as well, is, some years you can do, we've done really well, so there's a little more money to spend, and then some. And I've brought that up with a few other financial, and they sort of poo-poo it. They'll say, that's just time in the market, and you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean you can't do that? Us as owners, we've always had to do that. I had to figure out how many caps to have in inventory and to sell and not, and that was an integral part of every day.
Yeah.
So I don't see why it has to be part of it.
Yeah, if the market went straight up, it'd be easy. But the problem is interest rates go down, the market goes up and down. Day to day, you got to look at it and say, okay, what can we do? So what we try to do with our clients is get in a budget, a budget at the beginning, and then look at, okay, how much of the wants can we do every year? And if they follow that concept, they're going to be fine.
And I know you've said there's been some before you're like, hey, you're you're dipping in way too deep, and you got to sort of which I think the role, and I've talked about this as well, I think the role of a financial planner or wealth manager, a big, most important part is just keeping you protected from yourself a bit.
That is exactly it, because there are people I call in, we look at their stuff and we go like, if you keep on this trend, you're going to run out of money. And you've hired me to make sure that you have enough funds to live on. And I take them back to day one of, hey, you said you were going to live on X, and now you're living on 30% more. We're only in year 3. And inflation hasn't been 30%. So we need to revisit this, and it's either going to last less years and you're going to run out of money at the end, or you need to slow down your spending habits and get them to really look at their budget. Where can they cut? What can they do differently that they didn't really plan on? And sometimes, it's you can't really do it a whole lot because they had unexpected expenses, medical costs, things like that grew in. But they know, hey, over the next few years, I'm going to slow down. And, the biggest problem with it is when somebody retires, if you have a really down market, interest rates are very low, and you have a down market for the first 3 years, that can hurt somebody tremendously. And then we just really have to revisit the plan about, okay, what does this look like going forward? You probably need to adjust your spending habits. And it's real hard. I mean, just like nobody wants to take a cut pay at work.
No one wants to hear that.
Nobody wants to hear that. And it's very tough for me to deliver that news. But as a financial planner,
you have to.
You have to. Because if you're not doing your job. Because you just can't let people run out of money. You know what I mean? Because when they're standing there and they don't have any money, what are
it's
they
your fault, too.
It always is. Yeah.
It's your fault if they ran out of money.
You took on that responsibility of, hey, I'm going to make sure you don't run out of money, but I didn't do my job because I didn't coach you along the way. So we have a lot of responsibilities, a lot more than people really realize. And people even in our industry, don't realize. And sometimes they don't take seriously because a lot of people get into the market and they get in the industry, they get licensed, and they like the market only goes one direction up because it does that for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
And they think interest rates are always this and they never go up. Well, last year was a good example. Fed just raised rates. Interest rates went from basically 0 to 5% overnight. And on bond values, the first time we saw bonds lose actual money since like a long time, since like 94 or something. And you're going like, okay, what does that look like? What do I do differently now? How do I make sure we recoup this money? And what does the client need to do to be able to make sure they have enough money? You know what I mean? Sure. Because that's the ultimate goal. And, clients don't really understand that a lot of times because they know, hey, I gave you these millions of dollars. What happened?
Well, another thing I always see now is, when you factor the inflation and things in, what you think was a lot of money is less money now than even something as simple as $100,000 a year and $1 million is not anything like it used to be.
No, I mean, it used to be when I started in the industry, we said if somebody retired between $500,000 and $750,000, they were going to have a great retirement. Probably we could do, what needed to keep them up. And let's say then it was $50,000 a year, we could do that because they had Social Security, maybe a pension plan. And hey, all we had to do is make enough money off the top to cover their wants. Nowadays, you want to have a 6-figure income. It's going to take you $1.5 million to make sure that money lasts because they don't have the pension. They have a Social Security check coming in, but we're going to delay that. So what does that look like? It just takes a lot more money because the cost of everything. I mean, that house they bought in, 1990 that cost them.
And that's dipping into the principal. That's just saying you're going to live a certain amount of years.
That's right. That's
taking
enough.
The principal down.
That's having enough. I mean,
they're not down with any.
Don't come to me and say, hey, I want to leave my kids $1 million.
And I have $1.5 million.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to live on it for 30 years. Not going to happen, So we're like clients are having to put off that either the year they retire our expectations and take a little more less out, because people are living longer. I mean, medical things advances have kept us alive for a lot longer, which is good and bad.
Yeah, because sometimes that last part is not life worth living anyway.
Yeah, I mean, a nice part of that, you look at Social Security. When it was started, the average person died at 62, and you couldn't take it until 65. So the government had a great plan.
Yeah, they know you're going to die not keeping it all.
Never collect it. Now you look at it, and average age for a male is about 78, woman's 82. So you're living in retirement a lot longer.
Sure. Well, let's talk about something that I know is always an issue with owners, and certainly was myself, and it's not a knock per se, but it's the risk concentration piece that they just, I know my own self. I didn't fully get that until I actually exited the business. And then I guess maybe it was investing the money myself, investing with you, sort of seeing it, you go, wow, that was a lot of risk concentration that I didn't fully appreciate. Now I have some theories on, we're control freaks as general nature, entrepreneurs certainly are. And it's hard for us to listen to anyone. Let's just face it, even the people that know what they're talking about. But I think that's some of it. But that seems to be an issue with all of them that they may. And I know you run into that.
Yeah, when you have a high concentration of anything and, 90% of your net worth is tied up in a business.
Which it's usually that high, 90%.
Yeah, no, it is. That's, usually have a home. They may have some money in a checking account. They may have a mutual fund somewhere, but 90% of their money is tied up in that business. So as long as they're running a business that's running good, it all works out well. But the problem is everybody gets older and everybody slows down a little bit and the business change. And, as I would say is what's the best time to exit your business? It's when you're making the most money.
Yeah, that's what we tell. We always say, exit on the way up, not on the way down, and exit with a little gas in the tank. We tell owners, listen, do you think someone wants to buy something at the top and right before the fall? No, A, they don't want to do that. B, they're a lot of times very astute in figuring that out, so you absolutely, you have to, this, I always think of Warren Buffett. It influenced my own decisions. Like, well, how'd you get rich? Well, I always sold 2 cents, which is obviously not true.
Yeah, correct. Because you've gotten very wealthy by doing that. And the thing about the business owner is they know the dips come. They don't know when it's going to happen, but they always see more growth coming down the road till it's not coming anymore. And it's a nice way to put it. So maybe they don't have to exactly hit that high point, but they need to do it on the way up is what it amounts to. And everybody has a fear, did I sell too early? Well, it really doesn't matter if you hit your number. Especially if
That's exactly right.
I mean, does it really matter if, hey, that guy went and resold it, 5 years later and he made another $1 million? No, it doesn't, because I got my money out. I got 5 years of enjoyment out of it. Hey, and I'm living a pretty good life because I don't have that stress out. It's like you tell me all the time, you have 3 ways to exit the business. And it's sell, die. And what's the third one?
What do you?
The three ways you exit a business that you always say is die at your desk.
I can't remember the third one.
I can't either. I was like sitting here, I was thinking about.
I don't remember the third.
Oh, your kids take it over, I think.
Yeah,
the kids take it over.
Kids take it over, but that usually doesn't work, by the way.
No, I mean about 75% of those
or higher
fail in the first 3 years, and the third generation definitely it fails is what it amounts to, because they don't have the concept of what.
Well, and the risk. I mean, I know I have set with clients. One in particular comes to mind. I'll, certainly remain nameless, but he was 78 and he wanted to give it to his son. His son was not up to par of what he thought, but then he was going to finance it for him. And then you really say, well, the risk factor didn't change. It actually increased because now, 100% dependent on both of you.
Correct.
You're financing. And that's what I told him. I said, what if you just kept the 20 million and gave Junior whatever you want to give Junior? It doesn't really matter. It's up to you. Then everyone's hedged, So I think that risk factor is so great that now, I don't know that it is how you get very wealthy is leveraging something. I always think of my own analogy is when I was young. I mean, it wasn't that hard. I didn't have anything. So when you're 24 and you keep upping the ante, and there's really not a lot to lose. But as we have both seen, when you get 50, when you get there, you've owned a business 30, 40 years. There is real value there if it's exercise, but only if it's exercise.
Well, we all know that the business owner is the biggest risk taker out there. And he doesn't even realize how much risk he's taken on.
Oh,
and,
never.
But to be able to get wealthy and grow a business like that, you have to be willing to take that risk because you're the one responsible, making sure every employee gets paid, making sure everything's safe and everything's running good and the rent's paid and there's nobody knocking on the door. It's all on the business owner, and maybe there's 2 partners, but it's still on the business owners is what it is. So, to be able to do that, you have to be able to take some risk. And how many times do you want to gamble? You start out, you're 24, hey, if it fails, oh, well, I'll go start another one. It's okay. By the time you hit 64,
it's hard to do that.
It's hard to do that because you're looking at it, and if you really do a valuation, you realize how much you have on the line, you probably wouldn't do it. But how many people do we know that went broke at 70? A lot. Still happens.
Well, your energy level goes down. I mean, I always say, some of what I did early, if I would have known the odds, it might have scared me a lot,
Yeah.
And you're just kind of young and dumb and energetic, and, you have more wisdom, which creates caution too. I mean, the older you get, I know at least things like skiing and stuff like that. You're like, hey, I break easier. It's longer to repair, so do less.
Correct. And I got to make sure I'm here to run this business of my life to enjoy
what
I
anything
sold.
Change. That's what I've seen so many times. Something out of left field, not only health but just industry, COVID, a lawsuit. I mean, just all kind of. And you don't want to make it I talk to owners and not make it a scare tactic. I hate that. That's how they sell insurance. But you just try to scare the hell out of you. But the reality is there's some truth.
The business world changes. I mean, technology changes, things like that. And if you don't keep up with that and you aren't willing to change, you're eventually going to die out there. I mean, the business is going to die because you can't keep up with the concepts. You can't recruit new talent without, hey, I'm going to change. I'm going to let the talent really run the business, because you almost have to back off and create that middle management out there so you can grow the business to the next level, or you might as well shut it down or sell it.
And we've seen that. I've seen, where it just becomes stagnant and then it just sort of flutters into decay and then it's gone.
Yeah, well, and we've also talked to the business owners that to take it to the next level, they were going to have to hire a bunch of middle management.
Oh, yeah.
But nobody wanted to manage those middle management because still somebody has to be
Or in
there.
my case, it was incur even more risk. I had a bank line and I needed more capital to execute this plan, for which we did with private equity money. But before that, it was if I could have found the money, which was A, process that I couldn't, B, then it's sign on more than you got, and is that really, what do you want to keep doing at 50 years old?
It's kind of like that chicken before the egg. You gotta go out there and hire those people and do everything before you go sell the product. Because if you do it backwards and you sell the product and then all of a sudden you can't deliver, you get a bad reputation. Your business falls off.
Well, and then let's talk about that concept in the planning that you do and the clients you help is the diversification. I mean, I think having it to do over again, what I may have done. So a lot of things I wouldn't have done different, but I might have really worked a little harder at another bucket of building another bucket of money and not betting it each time. I think that would be a great concept. Now, it's hard for entrepreneurs to do it. Very, very, very hard.
It is. But just like, we tell the employee out there, you need to, if you save 10 to 15% of your income from day one when you start working, you're going to have a great retirement. The business owner ought to take that same concept.
But they roll it back in.
They roll it back in. They take the minimum they got to take out to basically live whatever lifestyle they live. They roll everything back in and go like, okay, I can grow it more. It can get bigger. And don't really take anything off the table. And they need to take a little more off the table if they buy real estate or whatever they do. I don't care where they invest it, but they need to start banking some other money.
So is that something you'll try to do? Let's say you get an owner, because like with our program, and you've been with our program a lot, we've done this together with people is, I always say there's no wrong answers. There's no answer that says you have to sell today or 5 years from now. But, the understanding that and planning for that is critical. And it's another thing. But I think sometimes it's a concept that the people get overwhelmed with from a standpoint that's going to take too much time. And it really doesn't have to. I mean, having gone through your program, I wish I would have done it early in my business. And I think not super early because it was survival.
Correct. You were trying to get by and pay the bills.
But mid-level, maybe you could have said, is that something you'll try to do? I know when you catch them long before an exit.
Yeah, because what we want to do is, what does that look like on what they take out of the company? And, for a lot of them, it's just setting up a retirement plan. So that
yeah, I don't even have that.
I mean, no, that's the thing is I don't even have that. What do you mean retirement plan? What does that look like?
I worked at a company that had a 401k one time.
Yeah, and I had some. I think I still have some money over there. That's usually their concept. But I'm like, the business owner, they always look at the retirement plan of 401k as an expense, and I'm like, no, it's an added benefit for you too, because we're gonna make you automatically save money just like we do your employees, and everybody gets a little bit more loyal to your company. The cost is really not that much, when you look at the tax breaks you're getting on this thing and things like that. So you really have to dig deep on that business owner and make him sure he diversifies, because the biggest concept, it doesn't matter what age you are, you need to look at if something happens to you. How quick is your wife going to have to sell that business? And how long can you operate?
And is it liquid?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's not liquid, so.
No. So does she have enough to sustain her lifestyle long enough for somebody like Gary to step in there and say, okay, we're ready to sell this business. How many buyers are out there? And they all know, hey, the owner passed away. It's a fire sale.
It's a fire sale.
And she's not going to she might get 60, she might get 70% of what that company's really worth on a good day. And then is that enough for her to live on? But if you put her out on this other money, she can buy her time for a while. She can hire a manager to run the company so that, hey, we can put a sale together so that she ends up a little bit better off. And that's something to think about,
Sure.
I'm not trying to scare anybody, but at the same time, I want them to really look at the diversification side of it.
Well, the loss, I mean, when you look at, like, one of the things I keep on my own investment plan is the loss thing. I mean, when you have a 50% loss, I mean, you get 100% return. People don't, and of course, if you're concentrating in business, it's not just, it's everything, because there's not even a way to, I owned Exxon and it went down 50% and then I'll just hold it. And no. It can go all the way down to zero.
It can go to zero. Every stock can go to zero. That's what I tell everybody, because everybody's
and your business can go to zero even quicker.
Yes, it can. quicker than a stock. Because
absolutely. It's illiquid.
Yeah, it's illiquid. And if sales fall off or anything, or mainly the industry change, or we have something like COVID happen or something like that. And let's say we had another COVID happen and the government isn't going to come with a bunch of checks to keep you in business. What happens then? It's like a lot of businesses go out of business real fast. So you have to look at, what is the risk of me holding this company long term? Am I able to sustain it? What is my age? What is my health like? There's a lot that plays into that. First we got to make sure it's going to be enough money, but then let's look at the other side of it. And then maybe you don't need as much as you thought you did to really take that risk off the table. Or maybe you sell a part of the business.
Or maybe you start ditching some over here to an account even and just forget about it.
Yeah, let's just build another account. So, hey, if this goes down, I have this money over here that I bucketed away, and it's all good because I know I have enough to live on and cover my needs at least, But that's kind of foreign to business owners, because they look at it
completely.
It's like, I'm making this return on this business. It's all doing well. It's done well forever. And even when I go through tough times, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Until you're not okay. And
the concept of failure they kind of had to put into another box.
Yeah.
Which, you need to do that a lot of times, and sheer will is the only thing that gets you through sometimes. But for financial plan, and I think especially, and this is what I try to convey to them is, hey, you're not at the 24-year-old startup phase. You're working just the same, and that's okay. But now you're 60.
Yeah.
Or 70.
Yeah.
And it's like,
and they have no concept of what the business is worth a lot of times. And, especially if they have partners, they ought to be going out there and reevaluating that. Because one of the things that we see, especially with partner type thing, is they don't reevaluate it. They have an old buy-sell agreement that they actually put a dollar amount on. And I've seen this.
And it's so wrong.
One of the partner dies, and all of a sudden you had a company worth $20 million, and the wife gets $1 million out of it.
Yeah.
And that happens, and is that partner going to go write him
I've
another check?
I've seen that in the buy sell, and then I've also seen there's no real way for the money to come.
Correct.
So let's say the business is earning, just pick a number, $500,000 a year, and the buy sell says it's going to be worth $5. Well, there's no way to pay it.
No, there's nothing.
That's
nothing
some of the hard.
Yeah.
See, we have a buy sell. Okay, well, where's the money come from? And to your point, what is the valuation?
Yeah. Did they really fund that buy sell agreement? And is there there should be either a life insurance policy or some type of payout.
The challenge is the funding is always hard.
It is,
because to go out and buy the kind of insurance to really make your valuation, man, it's
expensive.
It's expensive,
and you got to be insurable. One thing, because
you got to be insurable. And it's very expensive and almost counterintuitive expensive too.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to figure out, okay, where does that money come from? If it's $5 million, $10 million, whatever that number is, what does that look like on the payout? How long do we have to pay that back? And where did the money come? Is it going to force us to sell the business as a whole when we're not really ready to sell the business?
Why do you think that owners, because I was in that bucket, so I'm not preaching to anyone, just fight that so bad, as a concept to they just put it over here. I know the complexity is one issue. But, I don't, I think maybe it just my own, is it's just more, it's like something could end or it's death and I don't want any part of it.
I think that it's just like anybody out there. We never want to think about our death. I have 90-year-olds that don't even want to go down and do a pre-planned funeral because they just, my mom is a good example. She's about 83 and she talking to you about.
And you're like, Mom, you're going to die.
Yeah, you're going to die, Mom. And she's like, no, I'm good. Y'all can plan it after I'm dead. And I'm like, okay.
We would prefer now.
We prefer now because it'd be easier. Same thing with the business owner. They just think they're immortal. They're never going to die. It's like, I don't want to think about that because once I think about it, it's going to happen type thing. So I think that's the biggest concept that they have out there that really keeps them from doing the buy-sell agreement, especially funding it, because they don't want to think about it.
Yeah. I've seen that. Well, also, we talked a little bit about it, but, the importance of retiring to something instead of from something. How do you help them or maybe some experience sharing on helping them find that? I do a bit of that through my Next Life program as well to sort of, and it's questions like, what is your hobbies? And, it's sort of trying to find an interest. But that seems to be a struggle for them too.
It really is because, and what you have to really show them is a lot of times the people they hang out with all day is the people they work with. And
That's true.
that becomes their friends and their circle, their social circle, and everything else. And like I tell them, you have two issues here. Number one, those people are still working for the company, so they can't hang out with you all day long like you
Yeah,
want to.
they can't go play with you.
No, they can't go play with you.
They don't have the money yet.
Exactly. They don't have that. And second is it's very difficult when you have all this cash and your circle of friends doesn't have the cash. So they can't necessarily go on the hunt. They can't go play golf every day. They can't do that.
I've seen that a lot too.
But that happens as people, increase their wealth. That really gets to their problem. And I know some of my clients, they get this money and they go like, we don't have any friends anymore. And it's scary. Because you think about it, you go like, you got to hang out with somebody. Everybody does. You know what I mean? I don't care if you don't like people at all. You still got to have at least one friend in your world.
Right.
Right. So that's a difficult. So we talk about that. How are they going to, what's going to be their social circle? What are they going to do? And then number two, it's just like, let's set a goal plan. What are you going to do on day one? What are you going to do the next day? What are you going to do long term? What are you going to do? Volunteer work? You're just going to hang out? Because you only play golf. When somebody tells me, I would play golf.
Oh, well, look at me here. This is a big give back for me. It really is, because I'm fortunate, being in a financial position not to have to. But, my goodness, I'm not a good sit by the golf course. I figured that out myself.
Yeah. Oh, I'm awful at it.
No, there doesn't. But like I tell you, there's a lot of things to do out there in the world.
There
is.
And we just need to figure that out. If it's travel, let's figure out. But I don't want one thing. This is all I'm doing.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't ever work. So, because if you can't do that anymore because of health or whatever? So let's come up with 5 or 6 items that are really, really, conceivable goals that you have out there that you're passionate about, whatever that is. And I don't care what it is. Let's figure it out. Let's put that down. And like I tell everybody, kind of like you call your company Next Life. That's what you're really going into. The business is behind you. You need to forget about it. Now you're going into what did you really want to do as a kid that you never got to do? Now, if you want to be a fireman, that's a little more difficult if you're 60 years old. But if you say, hey, I wanted to do this, maybe I wanted to draw, I wanted to take some art classes.
Yeah, or like my last guest, he bought a guitar company and he writes songs, and that's what he did as his hobby.
That's what I mean. You have enough money to do what you want in most cases. So let's figure out what that looks like. Do you go volunteer somewhere? Do you do this? What is that out there? Because the business owner as a whole doesn't get involved in things in most cases because they're running their business.
That's it. Yeah. What you look at my own life and what I see over and over and over, it's your family, your business, and maybe one little hobby.
Yeah.
But if you're running a growing, very growth-oriented, successful, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. I mean, we spend a lot of times in the building process, and then as we go along and we really get to be friends with these clients and, grow a relationship with them about what that looks like and really dig deep, because 6 months, 1 year, 3 years are major points in their retirement psychological side of it. And everybody talks about young people and the struggles they have. Let me tell you, it's all walks of life. I mean, I deal with 30-year-olds, I deal with 40-year-olds, I deal with 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds. They all have stress in their life.
Well, and the life expectancy thing changes is a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, what they, this whole concept, and that's what I try to impress on them. And I see it's this whole, it's over, and it's, and I think they're incredibly fearful of being stuck in, because they are type A. They're scared to death of being stuck in front of a TV with a TV tray, which they're not going to be anyway. They don't even realize their personality's never going to allow that.
Exactly.
They're going to be doing something.
Yeah. But, I mean, if it's going down to the coffee shop, visiting with their friends and hanging out, doing something. I mean, business owners are the best retirees in most cases, because once they get out of it and their mindset gets out there, they realize there's a lot of things that they want to do.
Yeah. They don't see that at the beginning. They don't have time.
No, they don't have time. They don't even realize what their dreams and their hopes are, and maybe what their spouse's hopes are and dreams are, because they never sit down and do it. They just sit there and say, hey, I know I got to go to work tomorrow. I know I got to do X, and I got to sell X, and my people have to do this. And that's all they talk about. You know what I mean? I mean, I'll tell you one thing about our company, For Life. We really make even our young people go out and volunteer, so that they're involved in stuff. And we really encourage them to do extra stuff so that they get that concept when they're talking to these clients, what else is out there to do. And it's not all about work, and it's all about that.
Right.
I want them to be able to understand when they're talking to somebody that's fixing to retire. And we start talking to our clients when they're 40. about this, so we build on it over time. So like I was talking to one of my clients the other day, and they're mid 40s or whatever, have a goal of retiring at 55. And I'm like, okay, 55 is young.
Yeah,
And
that's a lot of years
that's
left
a
to
lot
make
of
money.
years retirement. I said, what is that looking like, so that we make sure we are, and they're on goal, but it's like, when you retire at 55, we're going to do some consulting work. What are you going to do? What does that look like? And I said, at the next meeting, we're going to dig a little deeper into that. Because really and truly, you never can start young enough. And especially for business owners, because that tells them, hey, when it's time to exit and it's the value gets there, hey, I already have a plan. And the value gets there sooner,
that's
it's
what
okay.
I encourage them, and our plan well, and we've worked together on a lot of it. It's just, it doesn't mean that you have to do something. That's what I tell them. I'm like, look, knowledge is power.
It really is.
And so it doesn't mean you can, like I tell a lot of them, you can die at that desk, and if that's your happy, cool place, then go do it.
Yeah.
But the same why planning is, foreign. But I think one concept to get across to the audience here is that it doesn't have to be complex. I mean, it's as simple as sitting and talking, right? With your plan. It's not, oh my God, I've got to get him every bill and every, to where Rodney's going to ask me for, and I just don't have time. I think this is what goes through their mind.
Yeah.
They say, I don't have time for that. I'll do that later.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming. Somebody sends them, hey, will you fill this paperwork
exactly.
out? Yeah, we have that paper. We have that paperwork.
Oh,
in
I
our
know,
office.
because you sent me. We were talking about what to show clients to figure out that number, and you said, well, I got this. I'm like, oh no, Rodney, that'll scare the hell out. It's got to be 3 pages.
Exactly, and I know that. So we've tried to short it down as much as possible. It's a lot better if I could sit down with them with a yellow pad and just kind of fill out. Just because if I sit them down or email it to them, 90% of the time, they're not even going to open it. If they open it, they go like, or they call me and go like, hey, your team just sent you this, and I don't even know where to start. I'm like, don't worry about it. We'll go through it when I meet with you, or let's go over there right now. This is kind of what I need. And they're like, okay, that makes it a lot easier, because, the one thing business owners don't like to do is sit down.
They won't do it.
They won't do it.
I used to, the next life questions I walk them through for the self-discovery. I thought, it'd be a great idea for me to email them to them. It was a waste of time.
No,
like,
it really is.
Did you read the question? Nah, I didn't read them.
Yeah. I mean, even business owners, even like when we used to work at the bank and they used to come in for loans, and you gave them, hey, you got to fill this out. And they just look.
Just say here.
And I was like, okay, bring it to me. I tell the loan officer, bring it to me. I know most of their stuff. They're clients of mine. We'll fill it out and we'll go back to them because there's some holes we got to fill in. But they just don't like to do it. Because it's actually thinking about what the company's worth, looking at what all their assets are, and it's just overwhelming is what it is. And sometimes it's like, oh wow, that's what it's really worth. What am I doing here type thing. So I think really accepting that is very tough for a business owner.
Yeah. I totally agree. So, sort of getting to a wrap up here, do you got any stories of somebody that's done it really well or somebody that's done it really bad that you can share that come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the person that does it really well, or, one of the stories I have here is, a client that we started working with about 12 years ago, and y'all recently, kind of sold that business. I think he did it really right. You know what I mean? And now he might have waited a little bit longer, but that's okay, because he liked working and he liked the stress of, hey,
they didn't know what else he was going to do. What he told us.
But I can tell you, I talked to him the other day. It's been a year. He's pretty damn happy. I mean, he's the happiest I've seen him. You know what I mean? And his wife is happy. He's happy. The kids are happy. I mean, everything's happy. And then we worked with him for about 12 years. We actually started the retirement plan for him. That's how I first met him and stuff like that. And we talked about that concept from day one. About what is our exit plan here. He didn't want to talk about it a whole lot.
Oh, no.
Because every time I brought it up, he changed the subject, and I just kept, dripping on him. And then one day he calls me, he goes like, hey, that guy, Gary, can you get him in here? Because he was ready, you know what I mean? But till that point.
Oh, well, I talked to him 3, 4, 5 times, which is atypical.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with that, because what I don't think people appreciate until you've owned a business a lot of times is it's a truly monumental decision. This is beyond finance and beyond. There's employees, there's family, there's emotions, there's I built this, my name's on the wall. There's so many things to sort through.
Yeah.
But like what I try to tell them is, there's no wrong answers. Now, not doing anything is a bad plan.
It's a bad plan. And I think a lot of business owners, they look at it because the employees become, especially in a smaller business, become friends and family to them.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay, if I sell it, what's going to happen to everybody? And is everybody going to feel like I bailed on them, betrayed them? And then they even get to the point where they're customers because they made promises to these customers. And now I'm leaving them. And I'm sending them out to somewhere else, and they all know I'm getting a bundle of money. Are they going to look at me differently? And I can tell you the answer is no at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I tell them, Rodney. I said, listen, you certainly can reward them with your funds, and I did that, and you can do that, and that's a good thing to do. But at the end of the day, what I tell them is who realistically goes to a company and expects to be there 50 years now, well, A. And B, if they really have this angst, they will go start their own company.
Correct.
So they're there for, the regular paycheck for them, it wasn't worth taking the risk over here and doing those things. And that's okay. Everyone, as my wife says, has a place and that's their place,
Correct.
And so, but I said, beating yourself up over that is not a good thing.
Yeah, because for those employees and the employees that are really driven, it gives them an opportunity to go start their own business. Because all of a sudden, Mr. Jones out there that sold the business, he's not my competition. I would never go compete with him because it would be a bad thing. But now Mr. Jones is not in the business. So a year later, hey, if I want to walk out and start my own business with a couple of my
I've seen that, and I've seen two other big scenarios. Is there's a lot of times family involved, which creates ceilings for other employees that can never get above the family.
Correct.
So there's that, and then in my own case, I didn't have the capital to take our company where it ultimately went to without the capital, and traditional capital, go borrow it from the bank, was not available to me or anyone in that bucket.
Yeah.
So you had to do some other. So, there's things that can be achieved and opportunities that open up.
Yeah, I can tell you with every business that I've seen get acquired either through you or through another seller or whatever, there's always opened opportunities for the employees. Even the banks I've worked with, and I think everyone I've worked with gotten acquired at some point because that's just the banking world. There's always, at first when it happens, you're always just, man, what did the bank do to us? They made a bunch of money. That was always a concept. But I can tell you where I am today and being able to start my own business was because some banks got acquired.
You may not have pushed you were comfortable, and you may not have made that leap.
Correct. I probably wouldn't have made that leap, honestly, because, I had a goal. I was retiring at a certain age and, hey, my plan was working, stuff like that. I would have probably never started. And it's been one of the biggest wealth builders for me. And it's also allowed me to take my clients to the next level. Because when you're working for corporate America, as I call it, they're always handcuffed a little bit. Because you have a profitability number, you got to do this, you got to do that, and somebody's sitting up in the tower looking at you, going like, "How come you aren't making us enough money?" But when you own your own business, it's yours to build, it's yours to have failed too at the same time. So, but you can do the right thing every day, and that's what we always pride ourselves on. Is no matter, as long as I've been in this business, we've always done the right thing for the client. Sometimes corporate America didn't like what we did, but we always did. And now that it's my business, I do what I can do.
Yeah,
I
think that is a big part of what sets you apart, and I'm a big believer. The big companies shall remain nameless, the big firms, but it's a real corporate cookie cutter approach that has, and I think financial planning in particular is very individualistic to that person and to that situation. I mean, it just by nature, it's always going to be that way.
Yeah, you have to build a plan for that client, especially.
And it's going to be different for each one.
Yeah, especially for wealthier clients. You have to build in the risks, the return wise, and you have to make sure that they understand the plan and how it works. And in our business as a whole, the financial planning world is a lot of cookie cutter stuff.
Oh, yeah. I see that. I've got a CFP, whatever the credentials, and really it's just some chapter in a book.
Yeah, and they teach you cookie cutter stuff, and you can follow the plan, and this is the plan. Well, that doesn't work in the real world because everybody has different things that go on in their life. You have to be adaptable to that person's life, and their life changes. And their problems change and their issues change, and you have to adapt to that. I say, we spend more time doing therapy talks to people than we do anything else because the money, that's easy. It's all the other stuff that comes into life that, it's the family. It's money brings issues is what I always say.
Yeah.
And it brings issues that people don't think about. And the longer I work here, there is not a perfect dilemma for those other issues,
Yeah.
because you got kids that need money, you have grandkids that need money, and some of them need more money than
New
others.
friends and family.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
You didn't know,
You
but
didn't
now
even
they
know,
need
but
money.
now, we always laugh that a lot of winners are the worst clients we have because friends come out of the graveyard and come find them. So you really have to be aware of all that.
For sure. Well, why don't you tell people maybe, how you find For Life and what's the process that isn't cumbersome. I know it's not. And what I like is, you manage money for me, and I don't really, we went through the risk profile. Now, I've known you a long time, so it probably wouldn't be be a little bit more cumbersome to go through a new client, but I don't, the other thing I think the big benefit of having managed money is you don't worry. It's not my bucket.
Correct.
Particularly while you're still running the business too.
Correct.
It's even more, because, and protecting from yourself.
Yeah. The first part, we start with every investor out there or prospect, somebody new that comes with us, they call the office. Basically, we do what we call a fit meeting. And the fit meeting is just to make sure that our process fits what you're looking for. Okay. And I want to make sure that we're a good fit for each other, because if we're not, it's not going to work, because I don't take clients on. We don't do transactions. Everything's long-term. I'm building you a plan for the next 30, 40, 50 years, whatever that is. And I'm setting those goals out there financially. Now, the first meeting is just basic concepts and see what people are looking for. A lot of times they don't know what they're looking for. And especially business
owners are the worst.
They're the worst. They know they need a plan. But
or they think they might need a plan. Yeah, that's usually where they start.
That's it. So it's like, okay, let's dig. All I want is 45 minutes of your time. And let's look at what have you done good, what have you done bad, and then what are we trying to accomplish here? And then start from there. And then we take that, go back and build them a plan based on what they feel they need. Okay. And then come back to them and, talk to them about, how do we create enough wealth for them to be able to exit and be able to do all the things they want to do if it's time to do that, and it's very laid back. It's very non-threatening is what it amounts to. And I don't ever take it personally if somebody says, hey, I don't want to do this yet, and sometimes we talk to somebody or we just follow up with them every year for 5 or 6 years. And then all of a sudden it clicks and goes like, hey, I need that guy's help. And we're there for them. Okay. Now, the way you reach us, we have an office in New Braunfels. We have an office in Victoria, Texas. Our number is 361-233-0087. If you call that, one of the team members is going to answer the phone. They're going to take down some basic information, and then one of the financial planners will follow up with you to get more in depth, and then either I or somebody on the team will visit with you a little more in depth.
Well, cool. Well, is there anything we missed, you think?
No, I think we covered a lot,
Yeah, we did
It's like me and you seem to be able to talk a long time about stuff, and hopefully this was interesting to people, and, people will take. I tell everybody, if nothing else, I want to be educational people. The business has been good to me, but I want to help educate people so at least understand what the future brings for them. And I think
that's what I'm trying to accomplish in the next life. Life's about optionality. It's about having options, and knowing what those options are is the first step.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, then you don't know what you don't know. That's a concept.
And we try to work well with their CPAs or attorneys so that we can do all that. And we just kind of say, hey, we're going to be the coach. We're going to present you with these ideals, and then we're going to talk to the CPAs and attorneys. We don't give tax advice or legal advice, but at least we can make them help them understand those legal aspects.
And then attached with that, I guess, is a risk profile. And it's been so long since I've filled out the stuff.
We do a risk profile to figure out what their risks are. Because, there's nothing wrong with having no risk because I don't want any risk. It's okay. But then we have to have more money because we're not going to get the return.
You just got to adjust that measurement, don't you? Say, okay, well, inflation's X and zero risk is 3% or whatever it is, 2% now. And that's
the way it goes.
You'll run out here or you won't, you know?
Because we all know, used to be, and when we were kids, $1 million was a lot of money. And if you saw somebody with $1 million, man, you're just like, man, they're wealthy.
Millionaire.
Yeah, they're a millionaire. They're great. Now, It's not.
It's hard to
I'm hoping I can get you through a retirement at $1 million. It's what it amounts to.
depend on what year and
Depends on how old you are, things like that. Because if you're 70, yeah, I'm golden. If you're 55 or 60, yeah, you're gonna have to work a few more years. Is what it amounts to. So it's just having a big enough bucket so that you can live your life. Okay.